all the things that your body does to burn calories in a 24-hour period are going to be very complex and almost pretty much they are impossible to measure. But you don't need to measure it because guess what? All of that energy that you burn causes your body mass to either go up, down, or stay the same because your body either stores or uses that energy. Wits and Weights community, welcome to another solo episode of the Wits and Weights podcast. I hope you enjoyed our last episode 101, The Truth About Postpartum Recovery and Empowering Women After Childbirth with Peter Lapp about postpartum recovery, diastasis recti, and the unique challenges women face post-pregnancy. Today for episode 102, we are doing another Q&A to answer questions from the free Wits and Weights Facebook community and emails and messages from listeners, which I always love to get. Whether it's a question, whether it's feedback, a comment, maybe something you didn't like, whatever it is, I'm all ears and I love to hear from you. We have questions today from 4 listeners about training at home with a video versus your own programming or template, how supplements impact your immune system based on dosing, some of MacroFactor's features, that's the food logger, and how they actually work, and options for grains and cereals as a carb source. Now, definitely listen all the way through because I'm sharing some of my favorite strategies in the answers to each of these questions. And I will refer to a few past episodes as well if you want to dive deeper into specific topics. Let's jump right into question number 1. The first question is from Shanetta, and she says, I was a regular gym goer before COVID. Then I moved to another state and now work out strictly at home. And since I work from home, it's most convenient. I totally get that because I also work out from home. I'm more successful with following along with a video workout versus some programs I own that either have just a PDF with exercises, sets, or reps, or a 5-minute video showing the moves, but then you have to pause the video to execute. Is this just a mental block I have to get past? I've accumulated a variety of home equipment that makes it convenient to stay home. When you follow a video, it's like having a trainer right there with cues. One of my strength programs has a fillable PDF that gives freedom to choose moves based on methods such as push-pull squat, push-pull carry, squat push hinge, etc. Maybe I just need to take the time to compose the plan and start day one to execute. Okay, there's a lot here, but I'm sure many of you listeners can relate to what Shanetta is asking about. This is the classic dilemma between having the structured guidance of, let's say, a video, a personal trainer, or a class, right? Many of us have come through doing classes, whether it's boot camps, yoga, aerobic classes, strength training classes, CrossFit, etc. And it's the difference between that and essentially doing it by yourself to some level by either following an existing program or designing your own or somewhere in between. And so I want to break down each piece of this because I think even though it's kind of one overall question, I think there's different aspects we want to attack one by one. Because my overall philosophy with anything like this is, what is the true source of the problem? Where's the root cause and where's the most friction? Because the surface level assumptions may not be the real answer, let's say. So first of all, the fact that you like video workouts, right? This suggests that maybe you're doing a program that is too complicated, meaning the fact that you have to have a video to walk you through all these moves, and then every session is going to be new moves. It reminds me kind of like P90X, Beachbody, that kind of thing that I used to do back in the day that wasn't super effective, but it definitely required you to watch the video because it was always different. Well, when I see something like that, I think it's actually too complicated and perhaps you're trying to do too much. And what we want to do is simplify our programming and make sure that it meets the basic principles of building strength and muscle. Are you performing more or less the same or similar movements from session to session or every other session, depending on your split, and progressively overloading via the weight on the bar or dumbbells or the reps or sets? If instead you're doing something different every single time and maybe coming back to the same move like 4 weeks later, 5 weeks later, or almost never, it's not going to be very effective and it's going to be very complicated and you will feel tied to having to do video workouts. So that's the first thing I would ask myself is it just, am I trying to do too much stuff because I want it to be, let's say, fun, and I'm all for things being fun, but they also have to be effective. Another way to simplify your workout if you're doing too much is some people are, for example, in addition to the workout, they're doing all sorts of warm-ups and mobility exercises and stretching and cool down. And you don't need any of that. You don't need quote unquote mobility. Most people, okay, I'm not talking about physical therapy or rehab sessions or somebody with an extreme physical limitation that needs to get over that. 95% of people just need to warm up with the movements. So if you're going to squat, just warm up with your squat. You don't need to do 20 minutes of quote unquote mobility, because mobility will come from working through the full range of motion on those movements. So just warm up with the movements. If you have different full body movements during a workout, you want to, and you're going from, say, legs to upper body, you definitely want to warm up the upper body as well. But if you're going from a leg movement to another leg movement, you're probably already warmed up. So what I want you to do is check out episode 15, way back in the archives. It was called Maximize Your Lifting Sessions, Warm-Ups, Supersets, Rest Periods, and more about that. But continuing on, my question, Shanetta, is what is it that you like about the videos? Because let's focus on the positive as well, not just what you're not doing. Let's focus on what you get out of the videos. Is it the cues, right? They say, okay, now do this, do this. Is it the tempo? Is it the immediate visuals you get on the form? And again, I think a simpler set of movements that you can master first. Like, for example, most of my newer lifters or people who start with me after lifting for maybe 3 to 6 months, they're doing something like starting strength or some other compound lift-based program where you might be doing 3 or 4 sessions per workout at most. And these would include the big lifts: squat, deadlift, press, overhead press, and then some maybe rows and or chin-ups and pull-ups, for example. Well, if you only have 5 movements to work on, it really simplifies the learning process. And the only cues you need are your own personal cues to focus on the things that you're working on in that moment. And this is where the mastery of these lifts is going to come in handy. And you may want to hire a personal trainer for 1 or 2 sessions to go over those and get the cues that way. But then once you have them, it's really up to you and your budget and time and all that. You should be able to continue mastering those moves for the rest of your life. Now, you could also join a group where you can put form checks up on the group, like the Wits and Weights community. We can do that for you as well, totally free, where you film your squat, you upload it, you say, what am I doing here? And I and others can let you know what the cues might be. And so that again comes down to simplifying and making sure you're not trying to do like 50 different movements, a whole bunch of aerobic or muscular endurance type movements, but rather a few key strength-based lifts. And then as you get more advanced, adding in a few accessories that support those lifts. Okay, so you also mentioned a mental block, right? Perhaps, just hear me out, perhaps it's not you so much as the programs you've picked and making it harder on yourself, thus creating what seems like a mental block. For example, you mentioned a fillable PDF. To me, that sounds like a lot of work, that the work is put on you to design your program. That's a big source of friction, of resistance. And I would say, in my opinion, 95% of people out there or more can just use a good template. I mean, I think you mentioned templates as well, but when I say a good template, I mean one that, again, is very effective, focused on the lower rep ranges, the big lifts with some accessory movements, done in a way that maximizes rest periods, recovery, and works along with your goals and your nutrition. So, personal trainers may not like me saying that because their job is to program for you, but I don't think you need someone to program for you 95% of the time. A middle ground would be to be in something like a club, like a barbell club. For example, I'm in Andy Baker's barbell club. I have been for probably 3 years now. He's one of the best programmers on the planet. And he writes a program for each week that everybody can follow. So it's not custom to you, but it changes. So you get the variety. It's fun in that way. And you get different options to choose from. You get a 4-day split. You get a power, or a basic barbell split for 3 days, and then you get a 6-day bodybuilding split. You can choose one of those to follow. And something like that is more than adequate for pretty much anyone, other than if you're trying to be a competitor or something like that and you need something very custom. So instead of a fillable PDF, why don't you get a fixed template that is effective? So some programs that I recommend for people: starting strength, Mike Matthews for women, Thinner, Leaner, Stronger. And he has an app called Stacked that's free that has the programs in there. So if you like using apps, you could just jump right into the app and pick one of those programs. Cody McBroom of Tailored Coaching Method has a brand new app that came out. I don't mind plugging that for him. No affiliation. And I think that's one you pay for. It's like $29 a month, but you also get access to tons of what I know are going to be effective programs for different goals. My good friends Katie and Heather at Stronger Than Your Boyfriend have a program called Stronger. It's a 4-day split. It has a nice combination of big lifts and accessories that are kind of unique, some moves that you may not have seen before, just to make it fun. But it goes on a 3-month cycle, like a 12-week cycle, where each 4-week block lowers in rep range. So you go from sort of, I'll call it, I hate to say hypertrophy rep range, but the higher rep ranges of 8 to 12 down to like 6 to 8, and then you end up at like 1 to 4 or something like that. But it kind of eases you into it that way. Any of those would be effective, and you could easily learn the basic movements by watching videos, learn the cues, and then execute them. And hopefully that helps you get over some of these blocks. Now, another block could be that you are not planning ahead. And you kind of alluded to that in one of my very early episodes, episode 6. Okay. Set your fitness and nutrition habits on autopilot. I do talk about how to pre-plan for everything in your week, including your workouts. And I don't know how well that episode has aged, but the principles are still the same. And what I like to do personally and what I recommend to clients is anything you can do ahead of time will, when you're thinking logically and you feel refreshed and have energy, like on the weekends for many people, is going to reduce friction during the week. So a simple way to do that is take the template that you're going to use now. Let's say it's starting strength, where you know that there's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday workout, and go ahead and pre-log the exercises, the sets, the reps, and the loads that you plan to use for your top sets, for your working sets. And go ahead and preload those in your app or your notebook, whatever you use to track, so that all you have to do is go into the gym, do it, and then check it off. And of course, if anything changes as you're working out, you can note it there. Prepare your gym clothes, your squat shoes, your belt, your pre-workout or protein or creatine, all that stuff. Just prepare all of it ahead of time so that you get up Monday morning, boom, ready to go. Let's do it. And then that's just one less excuse. So the last thing is, I'm a big fan of using resources and communities to figure this stuff out. So whether your medium of choice is a book or videos, but not videos in real time, but more like YouTube videos to learn the form. I like Starting Strength. I like Barbell Logic for the big lifts. Hiring a personal trainer for a few sessions, or even using an online community like Wits and Weights to post your lifts. And then, of course, if you wanted to work with a coach like me, I'm a nutrition coach, but I do provide form checks. And again, I'm not directing this directly at you, Shanetta, but just in general for folks to know that there are many, many options out there that are kind of an in-between for the answer to your question. Okay, hope that answers your question. I'm going to go to number 2 now. The second question is from Christina. Do exogenous antioxidants, supplements like vitamin C, negatively impact the immune system when consumed in high quantities? And how much is too much, if there is such a thing? And yes, there is such a thing as too much. Let's get into some of the details. My general advice for people, my clients, and just anybody listening is be judicious about supplementation and use it for a specific known purpose for you as an individual, including nutrient deficiencies. So this is where you would use a multivitamin. Maybe you take magnesium, maybe you supplement with vitamin D, and the dosing and the need for it are depending on your deficiencies. For performance, so this is where creatine comes into play. I think everybody should be taking creatine, honestly. And probiotics, right, for digestion and gut health, which can be obtained from food, but many of us like to supplement with that as well. Now, I'm okay dosing with vitamin C, vitamin E, selenium, zinc, copper, whatever you need for deficiencies or immune function in moderate amounts, in the amounts that you would normally see on an over-the-counter product. But an excessive amount of anything is going to be, at best, useless, meaning you get diminishing returns, and at worst, toxic, right? We know that anything in too high of a quantity can be toxic. I mean, it depends on if it's water soluble or fat soluble, things like that. Like, for example, vitamin C, it's hard to overdose on that versus, say, vitamin D. So you kind of have to understand those nuances, but the key is to keep it in a moderate dosing level per the recommendations. Now, the first source of all nutrients should be what? Food, right? Period. This is why I prefer a diet of something like 80% or more whole foods. Notice I said 80%. I didn't say 100%. I didn't say you cut everything out. We are not about restriction here. This is more that if we are trying to improve our body composition, we're trying to manage our hunger, and we want to manage our health at the same time, we're going to seek out lower calorie density, higher satiety, higher fiber, lots of variety, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, all that. A lot of which has been actually conventional wisdom for many years. But because of our modern food environment and the level of processing, it's hard to do that. And the more processed foods you have, the less nutrients you're going to have and the more deficiencies you're going to have. But I also like data. You know that. You know that, Christina, and everyone listening. I love data. I love closing that feedback loop. And here you can track specific nutrients and micronutrients if your food logging app can do that. And this is where I talk about MacroFactor all the time. We went into detail about it on episode 98, but it can now do that in great detail. You can track your micronutrients. You can set targets. It can automatically set targets based on what the science says. And that'll give you a really good idea as well if something is too much, right? So things that can be at a toxic level of intake, they will often have an upper limit defined. Not always, but they will in many cases, like, for example, saturated fat. So like anything, there is a minimum effective dose that you might need to fill in that gap. And then there's often a toxic dose, and it varies based on the individual, right? Your age, your dieting history, medical history, your activity, your diet, of course. One simple reference, if you're looking for numbers, Christina, is the recommended dietary allowances, the RDAs. And as much as there might be controversy over government-sponsored recommendations, it's at least a starting point, right? Because they tend to be on the conservative side anyway. And you can look those up for specific nutrients and see if a particular supplement or antioxidant is way out of bed from those recommendations. As to your specific question about their impact on the immune system, a few things come to mind. First, the supplement form of anything, so if you get anything in a pill instead of from food, it may not have the same benefits as the things in food, right? Because it's not complemented by the other nutrition and the other nutrients and the other compounds in food. So I think I talked about this. What did I talk about this on? Oh, it was my bonus episode about the carnivore diet recently, where I talked about how real food like fruits, vegetables have other compounds that aren't necessarily tracked, and they may have complementary effects with these nutrients that you're trying to seek out here. They may not have the same benefits, and they might even act as what's called a pro-oxidant, which can cause oxidative stress, which is the opposite of what you want. We want antioxidants, not pro-oxidants. The second thing is that high doses could modulate the immune system in ways that we don't understand, right? Meaning you're actually causing an effect on the immune system to compensate in some way. And this is beyond the scope of this podcast and shouldn't be a concern if you're not taking unreasonably high doses of these antioxidants. So long story short, keep it simple. Don't use supplements as a shortcut. They are absolutely the lowest priority thing when I work with clients after energy balance, macros, micros, fiber, hydration, even meal timing are all more important than supplements, but supplements can fill in that gap. Okay. So that was the second question. Let's move on to question number 3 from Anne. She says, I loved your recent episode 98 about food logging apps and MacroFactor in particular. Great info. And by the way, I've gotten a lot of feedback on that episode. When I created it, I wasn't sure if it would come across as just like a sales pitch for the app, but a lot of people have gotten back to me and said, I was on the fence. I've been using, say, MyFitnessPal or something else for all these years. And I was on the fence because it's a paid app. And I jumped in based on your episode, which clearly outlined why these other apps are problematic. And now all of a sudden, like within days or a week of using it, I absolutely love what it's helping me discover about myself and helping me reach my goals. So thank you everyone who wrote in about it. And anyway, continue with the question. Anne has 3 questions built into this one question. Does MacroFactor allow you to pre-log the day before? Is it only via your body weight that it figures out how to change calories and macros? And can you change the macro amounts? For example, I eat pretty high protein for my weight as I'm a petite female, or does it do a standard like 1 gram per pound? Okay, I love these questions because they go to the heart of features that make food logging apps helpful or not. The very principles I was talking about in that episode. So I'm going to answer these one by one, and then I will repeat Anne's questions as I go along, just so everybody can follow what I'm answering. Before I do, I want to remind you to check out episode 98, which is titled, Is Your Food Logging App Sabotaging Your Fat Loss and Physique Goals? Go check that out so you have some more context. So Anne's first question was, does MacroFactor allow you to pre-log the day before? The answer is yes. You can log foods, meals, or not meals, foods in what they call plates, which is multiple foods in a single time. Because MacroFactor doesn't use meals, because meals is a limiting construct. MacroFactor allows you to log to any time you want. So if you eat 10 times a day, you can log it that way. Very flexible. So you can pre-log, or you can log a day, the previous day, you can log future days as far out into the future as you want. Even better is I encourage this practice as a way to meal plan for yourself and to also solve problems that have been a struggle for you. So let me break those down. The first one, using MacroFactor as a meal planner is a beautiful thing, because you can, for example, if you know you're going to go out on Saturday night for a big dinner or to a restaurant and you know it's going to be pretty indulgent, you can pre-log that whole day and figure out what it's going to look like. You can say, okay, working back from right to left, I'm going to put in my dinner first, and I'm going to have, buttered dinner rolls. I'm going to have the appetizer of fried onion rings. I'm going to have a Caesar salad. I'm going to have, a steak with butter, and I'm going to have potatoes, and I'm going to have dessert, whatever. I'm just randomly rattling off things. And you come to find that it's 1,800 calories, and it's, blown through your fat budget most likely. And your calorie needs or your calorie targets are, let's say, 2,500 calories. So now you have 700 calories left for earlier in the day, and you go ahead and you plan out a light protein, veggie-based lunch and breakfast. And maybe it's more than 700 calories, because you don't want to starve yourself. You want to have enough energy. You want to have carbs and protein throughout the day. You want to distribute protein and all that, and you don't want to feel like you have to binge. So you go over by maybe 300 calories. But guess what? That's just 300 calories. You've already figured out what you're going to do. You have a plan. 300 calories is a drop in the bucket compared to if you didn't do that, and then you had a big breakfast because it's Saturday, and then you had a big lunch, and then maybe your normal snack, and all of a sudden you get to dinner, you've already eaten, let's say, 1,500 calories. If you still eat the way you were going to plan to eat, now you're going to be 1,000 calories over your budget. So it's great as a pre-planning, meal planning tool. The other way to do this, as I mentioned, was if you have trouble hitting a particular macro like protein. That's a very common one. You have trouble hitting your protein. Actually, a lot of my clients also sometimes have trouble hitting carbs, because I'm asking them to eat more carbs than they ever thought they could eat and still, lose fat and improve their body composition. But it's true. And so what I ask them to do is use MacroFactor and plan out their next day. Let's say a routine day, today's a Wednesday, tomorrow's a Thursday. And I want you to plan out the day as if it is 100% successful, right? 100% macro and calorie adherence, meaning you hit it right pretty much close to the gram, even though reality is never going to work out that way, and that's okay. It will immediately tell you, based on the foods you start to log, where you're off. I mean, it's pretty simple. You see that you need or you want 150 grams of protein, and what you've logged is 100. You're short 50. Now you have to start moving things around. So it's a perfect, logically driven, cool-headed, in the moment, non-emotional way to tell your future self, hey, get real. What you're doing isn't quite getting there. We need to make a change. And now I'm pre-planning how to make that change. Okay. So the answer is yes, you can pre-log. And then I just went on 2 big reasons why you want to do that, actually. And second question was, is it only via your body weight that the app figures out how to change calories and macros? So what she's asking, because I'm going to reword this, what I get from a lot of people is, where do I enter my activity? Like my exercise? Why does it need exercise? Right? To figure out your expenditure and what the targets need to be. Well, here's the thing. All MacroFactor needs is 2 data points. It needs your body weight and it needs your calorie intake. And the beauty of this is that our bodies are a closed system, right? So you have energy coming in the form of food, which is measured by calories. You do a bunch of stuff, not just voluntarily, but involuntarily. all the elements of your metabolism are happening all the time, every day, right? Your organs have to function. That uses a ton of calories. Your liver, your heart, your lungs, your brain. Those are using a ton of calories. Your lungs to keep you breathing. All the involuntary movements like flat, blinking your eyes and such. So that's like 2/3 of your calories. You move around all day doing stuff, whether you're standing, sitting, walking, cooking, cleaning, all of that. You are potentially exercising as well, right? You should be. You're training, you're strength training, you're, biking, you're doing some sort of cardio or whatever. And you're eating food as well. And the act of eating food and digesting that food burns calories. So guess what? When I hear the question, where do I enter my activity calories? And I know, Ann, you didn't ask that explicitly. I'm just extrapolating to what a lot of people think. I should also ask the question, okay, where do I log my digestion calories? Where do I log the calories that my organs need to function? Where do I log? You get where I'm going? It gets kind of ridiculous, actually, when I make that hypothetical that all the things that your body does to burn calories in a 24-hour period are going to be very complex and almost pretty much they are impossible to measure. But you don't need to measure it because guess what? All of that energy that you burn causes your body mass to either go up, down, or stay the same because your body either stores or uses that energy. It stores it in your fat cells or it releases it from your fat cells, as well as glycogen, right, in the form of glucose from carbs and maybe from protein if you don't have enough carbs and your body starts to cannibalize its own protein. It's going to take immediate energy from the food coming in and then stored energy from your fat cells. And what happens? At the end of the day, your weight either goes up, down, or stays the same. So MacroFactor only needs your weight and your calories to know how many calories you're burning without having to know all the stuff that happens in the middle. Think of a car. Think of it as a car. I don't know if this analogy will work, but if you wanted to calculate the gas mileage of a car, which is kind of like its expenditure, right? Kind of like its metabolism. You're going to say, how many miles did you drive divided by how much gas did I burn? All you have to know is how many miles you drove and how much gas is left in the gas tank. You don't have to know how much energy is used by all the components of the engine, by the tires, by all the wasted heat and mechanical energy. No, you don't have to know all that. Just what goes in and what goes out. Simple and precise all in one. So to answer your question, yes, all it needs is weight and calories, and I encourage you to log those every single day. If you log weight, it needs at least one weigh-in per week, but I strongly encourage you to weigh every day to get better precision. Because if you do it once a week, as I've talked about before, you may be hitting a high point or a low point, and if it goes up or it goes down from one point to the next, it may not be an accurate reflection of what's happening to your body. MacroFactor will use an average over a 3-week period regardless, but it's better to have more data points. And then calories, you should be logging your food every day anyway. It's great for awareness and it's great for precision in the data. So it knows, okay, I'm eating this many calories. My body is doing this. Therefore, I'm burning this. Then you'll know what to do. You know, oh, maybe I should walk more and start to push that expenditure up. You don't need to log it in the app. The app will realize that you're eating the same amount of food and all of a sudden you're losing weight where you weren't losing weight before. Oh, you must be moving more, doing something that burns more calories. All right. Ann's last question related to MacroFactor was, can you change the macro amounts? For example, I eat pretty high protein for my weight as I'm a petite female, or does it do a standard like 1 gram per pound? All right. So in MacroFactor, when you set up a goal to gain weight, lose weight, or maintain, it's going to prompt you to set up your program, your macro program. And there's a few different settings there. And a few settings are universal. I recommend these universal settings. The first one is called coached. So you could either do coached, collaborative, or I think it's called manual. And the coached profile is going to set your targets for you based on your body stats, body composition, and the goal that you set, right? Based on the rate of gain or the rate of loss and based on what weight you are right now. So if you want to maintain, it's going to be based on that, on not changing at all. So I would use the coached profile for pretty much 99% of people. And then here's the thing, you can change the amount of fats and protein that it uses. So you can set it to low fat or low carb or keto. You can do that. It gives you those options. So for somebody who just prefers lower carbs and wants to give it a shot, do that. Again, I usually recommend just the balanced option, which is let the app figure it out for you based on the evidence of a good balanced approach to your macros. And then finally, you can set your protein level. You can set it to low, moderate, high, and very high. And I usually recommend high, or in some cases, very high. And so the high and very high, it's going to get it close to that 1 gram per pound. And then the low and the very low will be like around 0.7 to 0.9. But it's all within the range of what the evidence suggests is optimal for results. And by results, we mean improving your physique, improving your health, achieving your goals, losing fat, building muscle. Cool? So your question was, can you change the macro amounts? That's the way I would do it. I would change, if you don't want to do balance, you can go to low fat or low carb or keto. And if you don't want to do like very high protein, you can go to high or moderate protein. Okay. The last question is from Alan. Cooler weather is coming, and many people may turn to cozy oatmeal, overnight oats, etc. for their carb sources. Making me hungry. I eat oatmeal every morning. Aside from oatmeal, are there any other cereals or grains that we can incorporate? It's a good question, right? Cereals. I love that we're asking explicitly, like, give me more carbs, give me more grains and cereals, because I know that those are carbs and they might serve my goals, and there's nothing wrong with them whatsoever. Also, do high protein cereals such as Kashi Go, which I love with plain Kefir or Greek yogurt, or Magic Spoon, offer an acceptable alternative? I guess the main question would be, should we avoid going down the cereal and granola aisle and stick with plain oats? I think you know my answer to the question. First of all, plain oats are down the cereal granola aisle generally, but that's a technicality, semantics. I think when you're talking about grains, most of the options are going to be in the middle aisles of the grocery store, right? Because they're not perishable like meat, dairy, and produce, which you would find on the perimeter. So you're going to find them in the middle, or maybe you'll find them in the organic or the natural section some grocery stores have. But here's the thing. So you kind of were leading me with the question, Alan, because I'm all about flexibility and nothing's really off limits. Like, I think every aisle in the grocery store is open to having something that you enjoy that meets your needs, period. I absolutely do love oats. I love oats because they're versatile. They taste great. I mean, they don't have much of a taste in and of themselves, but you can put them with lots of things to add flavor, and they are high in protein, of course. I personally like old-fashioned oats, but there's many different cuts to choose from. There's the instant, there's the, like you said, the overnight, there's the steel cut, the quick oats, etc. Whatever you want. Now, as far as other cereals and grains, I'm going to suggest 7 of them. I know it's a big list, but I just want to put it all out there. As a nutrition coach, there's a million options, but these are 7 good ones. Quinoa, of course, it's an ancient grain, high in protein, high in fiber. It has that nice nutty taste. Not everybody likes the texture, but you can cook it in some broth and it gives it a little bit of a different texture. So you can go from from crunchy to soft. So quinoa, of course. Farro is another ancient grain, Farro, and it's dense and chewy if you want that. So again, I'm all about mouthfeel. I'm kind of a foodie. So if you're into that and cooking and recipes and you want different textures, definitely play around with all these grains. And if you're finally back on the carb train after years of being low carb and you're enjoying the beauty of what carbs give you, it's time to explore and go out there and pick these up at the grocery store and see which ones you like. So quinoa, farro. The third one is barley. Barley is good in soups. It's good as a side dish. It's in beer too. That shouldn't be your main source of it though. Bulgur, Bulgur, is very quick to prepare, and that's good in like salads or bowls, like when you have those, even like the vegetarian bowls, but of course I love adding meat to vegetarian bowls, so it kind of defeats the purpose. The next one is rice. I mean, rice should be on the list for anybody. Rice is a mainstay, both white and brown rice, all the varieties, all the fragrances, jasmine, basmati, brown rice is a nice whole grain alternative if you want more fiber and decreased calorie density. But it is a little bit more, because it's rougher in texture, it's not as smooth mouthfeel. And if you're on, let's say you're in a building phase, Alan, which you are, and you want to get a lot of carbs, it actually may be too filling to just eat brown rice, and you may want to have white rice. I think white rice is also versatile and delicious. So rice. The sixth one is couscous. Couscous is just made from wheat. It's effectively a form of pasta, just in a different shape that can be a lot of fun. Kids tend to love it as well. And you can, again, very versatile. And then millet. It's a small grain, right? Also very versatile. It's used in porridges, things like that. Now, some of these I almost never eat, and some of them I eat a lot of. Like I eat a lot of rice. I eat quinoa, couscous occasionally. The other ones, not so much. It's just, how much do you want to keep in the pantry and how much variety do you want to have at home and try. Okay, so you also asked about high protein cereals. Now, here's the thing. I personally have a subscription to Magic Spoon. I get a few boxes every few months or whatever, a very small amount, in case I get that cereal craving or I want a cereal fix. I don't get a lot of cravings these days. It's something that you find happens when you go more toward whole foods. You don't have these massive emotional cravings like you used to, which is part of why we do it. Keep in mind, though, things like Magic Spoon, they're still processed foods, right, in terms of the spectrum, but they're not on the crazy, like, ultra processed side of the spectrum per se. I went back and looked at my box of Magic Spoon, and most ingredients are fine. I mean, it has chicory root as like a fibrous filler. That's a natural filler. I'm okay with that. It uses allulose, which is a non-nutritive sweetener from fruit. It does have a few calories. I think for every 10 calories, you absorb 1. So it has some impact on calories. But products like Magic Spoon, I think were developed for like the low carb crowd. And I kind of wish there were some high carb, high protein versions, like just kind of normal cereal with good ingredients that add protein. But you're fine with these, honestly, because the food science is incredible. It's okay to take advantage of it where it serves you. And when you look at something like Magic Spoon, it's kind of like a protein bar. You have it occasionally. Don't have it every single day necessarily. Well, I mean, even if you had it once a day, it still probably would fit within your goals, to be honest. I don't want to be that restrictive for anything. But it's impressive, right? And they're tasty. They have all these. Now, they have what they call natural flavors, which is really not natural per se. I mean, you can go research what that means. And there were like 2 other ingredients. Honestly, there weren't too many. I think it's the primary ingredient is, man, I wish I had it with me. I should look it up. But the primary ingredient is just, I think, whey protein isolate, right? It's whey protein, something like that. That's where the protein comes from. That plus the chicory root gives it that, carby texture. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm going to let you in on a secret, Alan, and everybody listening. The thousands of people listening. If cereal is like the most delicious thing to you, it's the thing you just have to have. It's your non-negotiable. You just love it. And I know people like that with cereal, which by the way, you can pour almond milk in and, you don't have the extra calories from milk if you want to do that. And here's the thing. If you have the calories and macros for it in your allocated targets for your flexible diet, all right, a bit of your favorite cereal, even if it's not high protein, can absolutely fit in a sustainable diet. Yes, even those, okay, I'm going to say it, even high sugar cereals made for kids. Gasp. There, I said it, right? Some Cinnamon Toast Crunch is not going to kill you if it's in your 10 to 20% budget for indulgences. All right. And when you're eating 4,000 calories and building muscle, sometimes your indulgences come from interesting places. And granted, in a fat loss phase, these are the first things that we tend to limit, right? Because they don't serve our goals. Something like a high sugar cereal is just not going to be very filling. It's processed, yada, yada. It's not going to have much in the way of nutrition, although you'd be surprised at how much they fortify these things with after the fact. Anyway, that's what we mean by flexibility and not restricting yourself. And so take that, fear-mongering fitness influencers. Okay, that's it. That's all the questions I have for today's episode. And I think that was enough. So please send them in if you want your question answered in an upcoming Q&A episode. The best way to do that is send me a message on IG at Wits and Weights or Facebook, either directly to my profile. I think my link is in the show notes, but better off, go through the free Wits and Weights Facebook community. Those links are in the show notes. So our next episode, 103, titled Sweet Proteins, Food Science, and the Future of Sweeteners with Jason Ryder. Wow, I couldn't have planned that any better to tie off with that last question from Alan. We're going to be diving into the topic of sweet proteins. If you've never heard of these, neither had I before I met Jason. I obviously researched for the episode, but even then I wasn't fully understanding exactly what they were until we talked. So check out that episode. We're going to explore the science behind sweet proteins, their health benefits in your nutrition strategy, and then what foods you might find them in now and in the future. Maybe in Magic Spoon, who knows? As always, stay strong, and I'll talk to you next time here on the Wits and Weights podcast.